entering the Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog. Code Mayo at Underdog. Right now, get you a deposit bonus of up to $1,000 and a free pick in the Pick'em game. And having some fun with that. We're going to actually break down some more Underdog strategy on the show because my guest, Alex Blickle, has been lighting it up on Underdog golf in the Pick'em game. But Alex is with FTN, and you may remember Alex from a few weeks ago on the research show when he broke down the Truist for us at a course that he had played during the Pennsylvania Open and won. Alex qualified to play in the longest day in golf for the U.S. Open qualification on Monday. Alex, welcome to the show. You still tired?
I'm still tired. It was an extremely long day because I played like crap.
How bad? I saw you were near the. Did you end up finishing last of the group?
I was last, yeah.
How difficult did it play that day?
It played really tough, right? So, the first thing I'll say is I didn't play as bad as my score because I was there for one reason. I was there to qualify. And so I made shot selections based on the idea that I was going to have my A game because I knew if I had anything less, I had no chance of qualifying. And it's just not the right course to have your C game. I don't even know if what I had was my C game. Might have been like a D game, but it was far from my A game. And I knew going in, like, my short game's not good enough at this point in my life for me to grind my way to a great score on a course like that because the green complexes are just so incredibly challenging. They're so fast. There's so much undulation. And a lot of those holes, like I think 8 is a perfect example. It's designed, the green complex is designed to be a difficult hole at 420 yards. And then instead of using the back tee box, they just put the tee markers right next to the 9th green, which is another 60 yards back. So we're playing like a difficult 420 yard hole at 480. There's just not a lot of room for error on holes like that.
You went to the one in Maryland, right?
Yeah, Woodmont, Maryland.
And that was the one that all the live guys WD'd from?
There were so many live guys there. Even after all the WDs, it was a live fest.
Why did they all WD? Were they just not playing well? They're like, screw it. I
don't have the answer, but I think part of it is they didn't want to be embarrassed by Oakmont if they got through.
Really? That's the second time that I've heard that this week about why do guys WD from these qualifiers that they sign up for. And it's a chance to play in a major that they would simply prefer to just go work on their games at home for their tour rather than going out and shooting plus 20 next week.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think part of it is like they know that their game isn't in great shape. And just like me talking about how Oakmont is not a good place or Woodmont was not a good place for my C game, they realize Oakmont's like the worst place in the absolute world to have anything less than their A game. And they just don't think they're going to have their A game right now. So they didn't want to put up 83-79 like I just did over at Oakmont. And honestly, like some of the scores at Oakmont might be comically high because the cut could be something like 8 over. So the guys who are playing bad, they're going to be some very high scores.
Well, if you want to see someone play Oakmont pretty terribly this weekend on Saturday, the same day as the live show, by the way, I've already pre-recorded some content for you. If you're in the Toronto area, hit the description, grab a ticket, come see Cuss Corner live. Or if you can't do that, I took my buddy and my golf coach, who's a PGA of Canada pro. We just played Oakmont on the simulator. And I went into the day, Alex, like the last time I actually played with Jared, who's producing this show. I was striping it. Ball striking city. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to record myself play. Everyone's going to be like, man, Pat, you're really, really good. That's not what people are going to come away from this as.
It happens, man. It happens. And there's definitely like an element of you stand up on a tee shot knowing just how bad it can go. And it makes it that much harder to hit the good shot, which, by the way, like that's why it's so impressive when the PGA Tour guys go and just stripe it around Memorial, knowing every time you miss a tee shot, you're chipping out or things like that. So yeah, there's something to the idea that tough golf courses bring out bad shots, not just, just being tough for when you hit the bad shots. They actually create those bad shots too.
Yeah, funny you mentioned that because on Friday, I have a full-length interview with Andrew Novak following the first, me and Keith Stewart. I'm going to try to get your thoughts on it. Actually, I have Andrew and his thoughts into the research show as well to try to really break down Oakmont. Have you played Oakmont?
I did. I played in the State Open the year before I won at Philly Cricket.
All right, so tune in Thursday, tomorrow, to the Pat Mayo Experience and get some of Alex's thoughts on the course, who's played it in one of these setups before. I don't want to have you do it right now, and then people don't need to tune into that show. They need to hear it over there. Just walk me through a bit more. I'm really fascinated. Like, did you pull a Max Homa and carry your bag for 36 holes?
No, I had one of my best friends from childhood, honestly, Scott Bennick, on the bag for me. He same guy who caddies for me in the Pennsylvania Opens and in the local qualifiers. So he came out, my dad and brother came out, just kind of walked the whole time. Man, it's a really fun day. It's a really fun experience. Like, I can't tell you how many people we're playing in front of too, right? It's almost every single hole. You've got 30 some people just seated there. And then of course you have friends and family of all the players in your group watching along. So it's just like a super unique experience for me, not necessarily like the live guys and the PGA Tour players who are there. They don't care about those extra spectators. But for me, it's a really unique and cool part of the experience to be playing in front of that many strangers and definitely feeling like a desire to show them something good.
Did you get to see any of like the well-known players play?
Yeah, I saw a bunch of them. And honestly, like this might be an interesting note. There's a very like organic confidence that I feel when I show up at like a local qualifier, for example. And I know that I'm one of the best players in the field. And I know that the other players that are there know that I'm one of the best players in the field. And I was at the local qualifier when I qualified in on the range. I heard like a youngish kid, probably a college student, compared to me now that feels like a young guy, but he was talking to his coach, and I only know it was his coach because he kept calling him coach. And the coach like actually had him stop his warm up to watch me hit driver and talk about the way I was using the ground and how to generate speed. And like, I dare anyone to have that experience and not get a confidence boost from that right before you go play, right? But then the opposite sort of happened to me there at Woodmont. I'm practicing around Leishman and Kokrak and Munoz. Like, it was the four of us were in the line, and I must have hit like 10 wedge shots, and I hit like 9 perfect ones and 1 thin. And the thought that going through my mind was, oh God, they just heard me hit a thin one. They probably think I have no business being here. And it's like, so yeah, it's a really unique experience being near that quality of player.
So Leishman ends up qualifying with that, I think it's like a 6-foot make in the playoff to knock Munoz out of it. Trevor Cohn was there. He ended up qualifying. Ryan McCormick, I think, won the actual qualifier, so he gets his spot. And then the fake Undertaker, Brian Lee, ends up qualifying as well. I don't know who that guy is. Do you know him?
I don't, but I will say 10 under from McCormick on that golf course is insanely good golf. I mean, I would not have guessed 10 under was out there. I would have said like 6 under was going to be medalist, and 6 under still would have been really impressive.
Who was, I think it was Mito at the bottom. Mito seemed like he played a few holes and then was like, fuck it.
There were a lot of withdrawals, and I don't know who it was, but I know that one of the live guys who withdrew because he was about to make a 10 on a hole. So I didn't hear who it was. I just heard from someone that they knew they were following the live guy. They didn't know which live guy they were following, but he was having an awful lot of trouble, and instead of dropping another ball, he just walked off the course.
I just see a couple of the double Ds like Westwood, Peters, Matt Jones, Ormsby, Bubba Watson, David Puge, Ben Campbell, all WD. Then you had like Lucas Herbert DNF'd.
Yeah.
What is it? Like just like it said he shot a 77. Was that his score when he walked off the course?
Yeah. So basically like that was, he probably finished the first round and then realized he was out of it and just left. I don't know who else did it, but yeah, the DNF essentially means they started and didn't finish. The WDs down there probably meant that they withdrew before the tournament. Like a lot of the names you just mentioned, Westwood, Bubba, Hornsby, Peters, they all withdrew before the tournament.
So they were just like, yeah, we got no chance. We're not showing up here.
I think those are the guys who are afraid of Oakmont. It's
weird because Bubba was inside the top 5 at Oakmont last time after the first round.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. But it gave me a better chance. I didn't do much with that chance, but it certainly gave us a better opportunity to actually go qualify.
So when you play in tournaments like this against guys that have a chance to listen, I don't think Leishman has a non-zero chance of winning the U.S. Open. Of all the guys who went to Maryland to go qualify, I would say that he probably has the best chance of that group. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly up there. There are also some PGA names that I think I would have given a chance. Like Celinda is probably one of the most impressive players in that field, at least from a potential standpoint moving forward. Carl Phillips was in the field. I know I'm forgetting some guys. Bramlett was in the field. He was the medalist the last time I was there. He shot 8 under, and the same sort of thing. That day, I didn't think 8 under was out there. He actually was tied for co-medalist with Grayson Murray, RIP. So a lot of really, really strong names in that field for sure.
Yeah, and bummer for Munoz that he ends up losing to Brian Lee.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who Brian Lee is, but you can't qualify there by accident. If you qualified there, you played 36 outstanding holes of golf, and you are a hell of a golfer.
So if you have the chance to do this again, I assume you're for sure taking it.
Of course, yeah. I will be back at qualifying next year locally, and hopefully I make it again. I mean, this was my 5th time, right? So this wasn't like a super new experience, and it also wasn't a new experience for me to play really badly in the final qualifier. It is what it is. Like at the end of the day, you either play well and qualify or you don't. And one of the harder things for me, honestly, was like knowing how many people were following and rooting for me. Like there was a pressure, if you will, to give them some kind of sweat, make the experience of following my round enjoyable. And in that regard, I would have loved to grind out like a 1 over 3 over par round. But I also knew like I'm here for one reason, and it's to qualify. And if that means that I shoot 80 because I went for it instead of taking like making conservative decisions so that I could grind out a 75 or a 76 that's not going to help me qualify, I'm going to make that decision every time. And so apologies to everybody for not playing better, but I gave it my all, and I will 100% be back and definitely learned a lot this time that I think will help me for the next go.
It's funny you mentioned you're not there to come in second, or you were there to come in second. You were there to come 1, 2, 3, or 4 because
Right.
fifth might as well be DFL. You might as well WD'd based on what the result is going to be. It's a lot like betting outright winners in that
Not
way.
only
But
that, it's a lot like the first or last approach to DFS tournaments. Like a lot of the guys in my Discord were making that exact joke last night. I was like, you guys have no idea how true that actually is.
But it just reminds me of Rahm at the PGA Championship when people were giving him shit down the stretch. It's like, well, the only chance he had to win was by attacking impossible flags. And he was like, I don't care if I come second. I want to win.
Right. 100%.
So keep that in mind. It's funny because there are some guys, even at a major, maybe not John Rahm, who has 2 majors, maybe not Bryson. They're there to win, and they don't get any points or anything for the FedEx Cup, which could be very, very valuable to. I mean, Ben Griffin at this point doesn't matter, but Ben Griffin at the PGA Championship would have been a really good example. Johnny Vegas would be kind of the perfect example of this, that if he got into that position, he was just kind of lurking the entire day. But and Poulter did this at the Players the year that Siwoo won. He had a chance to rip it, I think, from the pine straw on 18 on the 72nd hole. He needed a birdie to put some pressure on Siwoo, and he was just like, no, I'm not making this shot. I can't even go for it. I will lay up and take my $2 million paycheck and 500 FedEx Cup points and be on my way.
100%. Yeah. Every golfer is different, not just because of like what their motivations are, but there are times where it's a really good decision to play conservatively and give yourself that FedEx Cup boost and all that stuff, especially like if you're in a position where you need to keep your card or get into signature events, things of that nature. Obviously, as you said, none of that qualifies for Rahm. Rahm only cared about winning and didn't care about anything else.
I'll spoil a little bit of the Andrew Novak interview I have coming up. It's actually pretty fun, just talking about how horrible chipping he was around Memorial and why that was the case is pretty interesting to think about. But if I could guarantee you're playing in the U.S. Open next week at Oakmont, if I could guarantee you could lead the field in driving distance or have your length off the tee, but you hit every fairway, which would you take?
Oh, definitely every fairway.
That's exactly what he said.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that even if I was like the shortest in the field and I would be, I don't know, like top 3rd in distance on tour or something like that. If I was the shortest in the field, I think I'd still take every fairway at Oakmont because that rough is going to be insane. I heard from a member at Oakmont that their plan is they're going to grow it to, or they're going to cut it to 5 inches the Sunday before and then not touch it again. And for context, like Memorial, I think was probably 3.5 inches, maybe 4 inches, something like that. 5 inches is insanely long, and it's going to be longer than that and going to get longer and longer as the week goes on. So you don't want any part of that rough, period, let alone if you can get rid of it on every hole in that hypothetical.
And Novak said he would take even par right now, and he thinks that'll win.
I would agree.
All right. Well, this is going to be a fun week coming up. But let's talk about the Canadian Open.
By the way, Pat, real
National
quick,
Open.
Real quick, Pat, just another note. The only Corn Ferry event I ever played, this was back when it was the Web.com tour, I think it was 2019. I played with Andrew Novak before he even had conditional status. He's an awesome guy. I'm glad you got to have that show with him, because I think the more people that get to know Novak, the better.
Yeah, as Jared pointed out after we were done the show, he's like, you guys just kind of like broed out for an hour.
He's just such a good dude.
Yeah, he was a lot of fun. Let's talk Canadian Open, though. It's at TPC Toronto. We already have some WDs to watch out for. Theegala has pulled out. I got to think he's basically taking like a mental health week, because dude's game is in the toilet right now. Maybe to get himself readjusted for the U.S. Open, because he will be in that field. Matt Kuchar is WD'd, and a guy that I think that almost everyone bet on, Michael Thorbjornsen, who was on my card, and then I posted my article like 10 minutes later, of course, that he WDs as well. So those 3 guys are out. Of all the guys that got into the field, Cameron Champ actually has the most interest from me, because when I don't know how much research you've done on the course so far. I've really hammered down on it this week to give people some insight, but it just bombs away, feels like the strategy here.
Yeah, I watched your course preview show, and then I read I read a lot of like what the redesigner kind of talked about, what his intent was with the course and things of that nature. So I've got a pretty decent sense, and I'm in complete agreement. It sounds like distance is going to be the number one thing. And then Josh, my like co-head of PGA, if you will, over at FTN Fantasy, we both agree that around the green is going to be very prevalent here. Number one, because of how many long par 4s there are. So it's going to be hard to hit a ton of greens. But then also the redesigner talked about like his desire for the course setup to be flexible. He wants there to be some drivable par 4s, things of that nature. So like, I don't think it's going to play 7,400 all 4 days, but that means that you're getting around the green as a scoring skill and not just a par saving skill. So I think around the green and distance is going to be a really good combination.
Well, I joked with EPAT is that they basically designed a course for Rory to beat everyone by 10.
It does seem that way.
But when you're at but Rory's irons have been like dog shit lately, that maybe that doesn't matter at all. But if there's like going to be one drawback to him, although his short game can kind of take him out of it, put him back into it so he doesn't have to hit his irons as well. I do feel like it does leave the door open. And let's just get to the weather really quickly. On windfinder.com, I'm using the Caledon Wind Finder. I'll have that linked in my Wednesday cheat sheet when that comes out. Rain overnight on Wednesday into Thursday. So it's going to soften up the course a bit. Very low winds on Thursday, very low winds on Friday, and then it's gusty season on the weekend. So I do feel like that's a variable that we can try to plan for, but it could just wreak havoc on the entire field. Like looking back at the past 2 PGA of America's events that were here, one was before the redesign. That is the one that was won by Long Dong Paul Barjon with Pendrith and Jake Knapp, second and third. I think it was -25, -24, -23. It was still playing as a par 72 at that point as well, but just guys who absolutely mash it off the tee. And then you see what happened at last year's Fortinet Cup, which is the championship for the PGA Tours of America, or the whatever the hell they're calling it now, the former Canadian Tour and Latin Tour smushed together in one, whatever they're calling it. But there was massive wind at this course the entire time, and -5 was the winner. It was still all big hitters and scramblers, as you kind of said. So maybe that's what we want for the weekend, that we can take a look at guys who are good in the wind or just pair up driving distance and chipping. Yeah,
I agree with that. I think you can also look at, as you said, like wind splits, difficult course splits, things like that, all of which we have at FTN. I'm in agreement with everything you said.
So Bobby Mack, that's why I'm betting him.
He definitely qualifies as the scrambler type. I like that call. There's another guy, like almost the exact same DraftKings price as Bobby Mack, Taylor Pendrith, that I really like. Very few hit it further than he does. He's not great around the green, but he's playing some really solid golf right now. And the major skill set there of distance, I think, has a chance to put him in contention.
Beat Scotty in approach last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's really good with his long irons too. So I think the number one, you get the distance that's getting him closer to the hole, but then also everyone is going to have a lot of long irons on this golf course, and that's an area where he can really separate more so than most weeks with his iron play.
So my bets, it's funny you mentioned Pendrith. I bet Bobby Mack at 35-1. That's if you go into the exclusives tab at Coolbet right now, you can find the 35-1. I believe it's 30-1 as a regular number, but you might as well get the extra 5 points on Bobby Mack. And on the show, like the first bet that I made was Taylor Pendrith. He opened at 33-1. He's down to 22-1, 20. He is going to be the most tipped bet of the week. I don't know. Would you bet him at 20-1?
No.
Neither would I.
I will be content to play him on DraftKings at lower ownership because everyone wants Rory, Connors, Lowry, and I'll be happy with Pendrith there instead.
So initially I had Thorbjornsson at 70, but obviously he's WD'd, so I got my money back on that. I went with 3 bombs because I still am kind of terrified of Rory this week that he just runs train on the entire field. So I feel good about the 2 runners that I have, sub 40-1, both at 33 and 35. I can manage losing those bets, and I think those guys have a good chance to unseat Rory potentially. Other than that, I went down to Ricky Castillo 110-1 with 8 places. I have Toasty 150-1 with 8 places. If you want to talk about short game and driving, he is the guy.
Yeah, he really is. That's a really good call. He's a very fun guy to bet too because he's basically like in contention or irrelevant, and there's no in between. It's like he takes that extreme GPP type approach to every single golf tournament he plays.
The last one I did was Rosner. Just Rosner's form right now for the stats that I want to see. Like Toasty, he will probably miss 8 4-foot putts throughout the course of this tournament, which will drive you insane. But the driving, even the distance is up for him. He's been the best long iron player in the field over the past 3 months, and he just keeps scoring. He just has a bad habit, again, of just 3-putting from 10 feet.
Yeah, Rosner's a funny one. I do all of our PGA projections, and one of the things that I do each week is I go in and like manually check the guys who don't always have the most shot link data. And I saw what our estimate was for his iron play. I was like, oh, that's got to be a mistake. I looked into it. I was like, oh, no, he's actually just been this good with his iron. So definitely like that call too.
So I was thinking about adding someone else to this mix now that Thorbjornsson's off the card. And 2 names popped up for me, so I wanted to run them by you. And again, I'll have this in the finalized cheat sheet on Wednesday evening. I really want to think about this one a little bit more. I don't think I'm alone in thinking that Ryan Fox, especially with the weather, could be a really nice fit here. Although he did win like 3 weeks ago. Is he going to win again? Maybe. He tends to go on runs when he does well, and then he falls off the face of the earth for 6 months, then gets hot for 2 months and does exactly the same thing. And then EVR is just sitting at 100-1. And if you were to comp this course on an easy day, I think that Craig Ranch is probably the place. It's just we might get a difficult weekend, but guys can go run and hide for a while if they can put up some numbers early.
Ryan Fox is where? Let's see. 70 is the best that I see for him.
Yeah, let's see. Let me check. Coolbet. This is why people who live in Canada and not Ontario should be on Coolbet. They generally have the better numbers on this stuff. Let's see what Ryan Fox is. Maybe he's been bet down. Let's see. What does the Fox say here? Ryan Fox 80-1 on Coolbet.
That's strong. We've got him at 1.7% to win. So that's really strong. I'm very much with you there. And I'd also say the fact that he won recently, that does not make me shy away at all. We don't often see guys who win twice in a short period of time, not because like once you win, it's harder to win the second one. It's just hard to win the first one, period. There are only X amount of guys. Think like how many winners are there this year in this field? It's a lot lower than the total number. So that doesn't make me shy away at all. And in fact, we've even seen guys who have won twice in a short period of time, even if they're not like considered the greatest players in the world. Like Bobby Mack won twice last year.
Ben Griffin just did it.
Exactly. We can absolutely see guys come out of nowhere to win 2 in a row. If anything, I would say the fact that he won recently should make us even more confident that he can win again this week. So I really like the Fox call. I'll give you one more name in that range. Nicholas Norgard is one of the best drivers in the world already. The rest of the game hasn't quite shown up, but we've seen flashes in basically every other skill set, just never at the same time. And so if he can actually put it all together here in a week where maybe driving is like the only thing that super matters, and then if he just has a good week around the greens, you could see him certainly in contention as well.
So I'm just trying to see it right now. I just added around the green to the modeling, not a ton, just to see where people rate out. So of the best plays, like Rosner sucks around the green. So that's a problem. Keith Mitchell, like if you were thinking about Keith Mitchell, also sucks around the green. And if he is in contention, he will shoot 85 somehow and finish T37 because that's what he does. Yeah. But of the best players who rate out the best in terms of distance, long irons, whatever it might be, I mean, Lowry doesn't rate out well in terms of distance, but he does in everything else. And he's elite around the greens. Rory is elite around the greens. Kitayama is elite around the greens. And he was a name that I kept coming back to. And then Alex Smalley would be the other one.
Smalley projects so well for us that I'm almost uncomfortable with it because in my mind, he's not this good of a player. But man, he is up there in our projections.
What is he betting wise? He's down to 66. Like if I was going to take a 66 to like the whole range at 66 right now, it's like Davis Riley, whose time might be up. Goddard makes a ton of sense. And I think he did just qualify on Monday for the US Open. How do you think that affects some of the players in this field? Is it a nothing burger? Like they're going to show up Thursday and be fine? Or is there a YOLO effect to Goddard? Like, hey, I'm in the US Open now. Who cares what I do?
I think it means something in large part because to qualify, you can't just like play 30 good holes. You have to literally play 36 good holes, which doesn't mean that you don't make bogey, but sometimes like saving a bogey instead of making a double or a triple is a good hole. Sometimes par saves are fantastic holes. And so it means you just played 36 really good holes of golf. And it also means that you did so under pressure, like the pressure of, those last, let's say 6 holes that you're playing, knowing that you need to shoot 200, like Goddard drove, I think a 370-yard green on like the 17th hole or something to qualify. Like to deliver in that type of pressure is a massive confidence boost. And it also then prepares you to, hey, if you get yourself in contention, you just played that well in contention. It also means that you can do that when you're on a cut line, which of course for like DFS, we care a ton about. So I do think it matters.
So the guys at 66, like Riley, Dietrich, Goddard, Homa, Knapp, Rose, and Smalley, I would guess that the numbers probably rate Smalley out the best right now. But Knapp has actually played this course, and there's only certain courses where I think he would ever want to use Jake Knapp, and this does feel like one of them. Although he tends to do his best work either on Paspalum or Bermuda, and this is neither.
Correct. But he also has done his best work on courses where distance matters a ton. And we get that from him this week, and where he can pull driver a ton. Did you see the video that he posted on social media with his like max out swing speed?
No.
Everyone should look this up. It's fun. He got to like 197 ball speed, and I think it was like 136 swing speed. For context, like Minwoo Lee, I think, had the highest ball speed of the entire TGL season at like 193. 197 is nuts. And that was all out from Knapp. And for once, it didn't look like he was swinging nice and easy. So your eyes aren't fooling you when you watch Knapp swing a golf club. Like, yeah, he's hitting the ball far, but it looks like he's got a lot left in the tank. Turns out he does.
I just worry, like from just straight out betting wise, that you're betting all these guys against Rory for one thing. So that's not great. I would want the play, at least with Fox, I could probably get 70 with 8 places rather than just betting the 80. I think I'd feel more comfortable with that. But with Knapp, if he's 66 to win, to get the placings, he's probably 55. I don't even really feel that good about it, considering there's guys probably at double the price I think have an equal chance to win the tournament. Like realistically, I mean, your numbers will actually tell me this when they give them a percentage chance to win, but how much more of a chance does Jake Knapp have to win than Toasty?
Let's see. We've got Knapp at 1.0%. So I'm with you that it's not a super attractive bet for me.
Toasty's like 0.3%?
No, he's at 0.6.
So the gap shouldn't be triple. It should be like less than double.
Correct. Absolutely correct. And I would also say like Toasty's a hard one to say because his bad can be so bad that like it pulls down his median projection, but it doesn't actually affect when he plays well, how well does he play. So we do, I think, a really good job of capturing the true variance of these players, but Toasty is one of those guys that like I will be the first to admit it's really hard to just perfectly model his full range of outcomes.
Usually that if it's a big driver heavy course, it's a good time to use him. Doesn't always mean it's a good time to use him, but usually it does. Versus here's Toasty at Colonial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And by the way, like he's not just long off the tee. We actually have him at plus 0.07 strokes gained per round with his driving accuracy. We do strokes gained driving distance and strokes gained driving accuracy at FTN. And he's good in both areas, which helps him take full advantage of the distance that he has.
Especially with potentially drivable par fours. That is a part of his game that's a little bit underrated, that it's sort of like an extra little level to where he can get an advantage. He's always been really good at drivable par fours.
Was it the PGA Championship like 2 years ago? Yeah, it was awesome. He was the only guy to go for the green, hit it to like 10 feet on that island green. That was awesome. And yeah, drivable par fours are Toasty's language for sure.
But the problem becomes he'll go for it when there's absolutely no need to go for it, and then he makes quad.
Yes, 100%. But I think part of like the thesis behind betting Toasty is that, hey, if he's in contention, he'll be just at least a touch smarter than when he's not.
Yeah, you don't know that. He had a case of the meltdowns pretty quickly in Houston when he was playing in the final group. Last thing, how important do you think that ball speed is at a course like this when distance comes into play? Because I was looking at it of players in this field from the past 6 months of the data that we have. Champ is number 1. 3 Danes are 2, 3, and 4. Both Højgaards and Norgard Muller, as you mentioned. Then it's Rory at number 5.
Ball speed is super, super important. And I would even say, like, if you're just looking at driving distance numbers, sometimes you get the effect of, like, especially on firm golf courses, the guys who are hitting it the furthest are sometimes the guys who are hitting the most fairways and therefore getting that 30, 40 yards of roll most often. Ball speed is a much truer kind of just signal of how far can this guy hit the ball. And then the other thing with that is, like, with ball speed, you also get the ability to hit the ball really high and to stop the long irons and to generate more spin with wedges or things of that nature. So ball speed is a phenomenal metric to look at.
I was having some problems sleeping. When anyone has little kids, that's probably going to be the case. They'll come up, wake you up in the middle of the night for no real apparent reason. So you're waking up, you're going back to sleep, you're waking up, going back to sleep. It's not the best sleep. I put my Apple Watch on and tried to track my sleep tracker. It was not going well. A lot of that changed once I got a Helix mattress, however, because I was able to customize it to both what I want, what my wife wants, and now we are sleeping throughout the night. The little noises that would just normally wake you up when you're not sleeping well, no longer the case for me. No more back pain either, because I'm actually sleeping on a mattress that is perfect for what my back demands, which is a lot because I have a terrible back. The one that I had before my Helix mattress, I spent a lot of money on it. It was bad after like 2 years. It had like the divot in it from where I sleep. It was unflippable. It was a horrendous waste of money. Not only is the Helix mattress I have now way better, it was also significantly cheaper. And it just showed up to my door in a box. Very easy to get onto my bed frame and just start using right away. So you can have all your problems solved with a Helix mattress as well. So you can go to helixsleep.com/mayo for 20% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/mayo for 20% off site-wide. Be sure to enter my name at the checkout so they know that I sent you. helixsleep.com/mayo. I want you to think about 2 things. 1, what makes your father special? Number 2, what makes all fathers the same? The answer to number 2 is that they are impossible to buy Father's Day gifts for. Who knows what your dad needs? But I can tell you one thing that the vast majority, almost all of fathers enjoy: steak, barbecuing. It's perfect. When it comes to Father's Day, some things never change. A recent survey shows 75% of Americans agree there's no better way to spend Father's Day than grilling with the family. So shop omahasteaks.com and give your dad the legendary Heartland quality he deserves. Plus, my listeners get an extra $35 off with promo code MAYO at checkout. Omaha Steaks has been America's original butcher since 1917, a family-owned company with over 100 years of expertise in the meat industry. They also carry mouth-watering burgers, chicken, pork, seafood, dessert, and easy-to-prepare comfort food. This Father's Day, give Dad the world's best steak experience with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for a guaranteed perfect gifts that deliver legendary quality. For an extra $35 off, use promo code MAYO at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com and an extra $35 off with promo code MAYO at checkout. See site for details. Let's move to one and done. I've started to slip. I had a team that was inside the top 20, then it was inside the top 30, then it was inside the top 40, and now it is in 85th place. It was up to as high as 9th last week when Shane Lowry was in second place, and then he fell off the face of the earth and Scotty won, and all of the remaining people who had not used Scotty rightfully used him last week. That was the best possible spot. I talked about it through with Tambo. Like, where else were you going to use Scotty the rest of the season that made the most sense? You could either take him at the U.S. Open against every good player, or take him in an elevated event for $4.2 million for a win without Rory.
Yeah, very easy decision. And honestly, like, if you don't have a win from Rory and Scotty this year, you basically have no chance because so many people got both. And if you're like me and you have neither, you're way behind.
I got the Rory Masters. No, I got the Rory Players win. And I used Scotty at Bay Hill. And I think he had like 450,000, which sucks considering someone just got 4 million for him for winning an elevated event. But I had Thomas at Heritage, so it kind of made up for it.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And the players win is the most important in the entire year, right? That's the biggest first place prize.
It is, but Rory was able to make it up for people if they used him at Pebble or the Masters. Like, it was comparable enough that you didn't get left behind.
True.
So I kind of used Scotty in the worst possible time. But you got to save these guys for elevated. You got to save the good players for the elevated events. Like, that is the strategy now in one and done. This is not an elevated event. So I'm guessing Pendrith will probably be by far the highest owned guy this week.
Yeah, I would think so. And we're also in the part of the year where, like, we kind of can't give just blanket advice for one and done because it is entirely dependent on how you're doing. Are you near the lead? Are you way behind? Are you somewhere in between there? So yeah, the strategy for everybody is going to be completely different. But I think that one way to do it is just like find your, like, let's say 5 to 10 guys that you think have the best chance of winning or the best chance of finishing high. And then just like mark down which, like, do you think that this guy's going to be popular, unpopular, super unpopular, and then use that to make your decision based on where you are in the field.
So I don't have the luxury of using Rory, Ludwig, Connors, Lowry, or Pendrith because I have used them all at some point of the season so far. So Bobby Mack's actually the best player per the odds that I have remaining. Then it's like Burns, Sungjae, Harry Hall, Keith Mitchell. Hell, I've even used Nick Taylor. So like Mac Hughes, Kurt Kitayama are up next on that front. Now I can't piss this tournament away, although it's not the most important. Clearly the next 2 weeks are going to be far more important to how I do for the rest of the season and getting that right versus this week. But picking up, $1 million here, 800 grand here could really go a long way to boosting me back up. If I think that even if I had Pendrith, I probably wouldn't use him on this team, knowing that everyone ahead of me is probably going to use Pendrith. So where do you see that sweet spot being? Like after Pendrith in one and done, just knowing how much certain guys have been used already this year. Like Lowry is available in 60% for people's picks. Like Ludwig's only available for 28%. And if you saved Ludwig this long, maybe you use him here, or maybe you just fire him at the US Open, knowing that no one else is going to have him. And that's how you make your move, by having a potential elite player. We'll talk about Ludwig specifically in the underdog segment of the show, but if he just hits his peak, like he did at the elevated event earlier on this year, all of a sudden you're doing a lot better. You're clearly not using Rory if you still have him left in a tournament that doesn't pay $4 million to the winner. Like, why would you? So if it's not Pendrith, who is it?
There are a couple names I think you can go to. You mentioned a few that I really like. I think Kitayama, Goddard, even Ryan Fox we were talking about. I think they make some sense. Sam Burns is really interesting. He's got the distance. His short game is much improved. He's playing really good golf right now. And he's about as good as you can be without me feeling like you want to save him for an elevated event. I wouldn't feel like I was missing out on a better opportunity to play Burns. So I think he might be at the top of my one and done list.
He did gain on approach for the first time in 5 months last week.
That's good to see. Speaking of guys who can't gain on approach, Sungjae Im is also an interesting one because he was our second worst estimated iron player in the field last week. And of the guys who actually play on the PGA Tour, he's last again this week. And only the total no names and some Canadians who qualified in are worse in our strokes gained approach estimates this week than Sung J M. So when you have one skill set that's that bad, it's like super difficult to actually have the kind of spike week that will allow you to contend against the best players in the world. But when you might maybe only need +3 strokes gained per round instead of +4 or +4.5 to win the golf tournament, now all of a sudden you have a chance to win again. So this could be an interesting week to use Sung Jae, even though he's far more accurate than he is long off the tee.
I think that I would prefer him. Like, I don't know if I'm going to, I mean, if Tambo was on the show, he'd play him because he plays him on draft. We argued about him versus Keegan last week. I don't even know who ended up being the winner of that. Where did Keegan end up finishing?
Keegan was very good. He was tied for 7th at 2 under. I know this because it was the second consecutive week where I had an each way outright on him, and he lost it on like the last hole or something. So he's been playing great golf, just not quite enough to make me a bunch of money with those outrights.
Dude can't putt. I mean, that's nothing new, but I mean, I don't actually even hate him next week.
It wasn't even the putter this week. It was the par 5 penalty strokes. On the final day, he maybe even made 2 pars on par 5s with penalty strokes. It was like, dude, just put the ball in play. Your entire game has been good. And he kept doing this thing where he would make a birdie and it's like, there he is. All he needed was that difficult birdie. He steals a birdie and then gives it right back on an easy hole. It was brutal. In the PGA Championship, he missed a 3-footer on the last hole to cost him the each way, by the way. It's been a rough go in that regard, even though he's playing some really solid golf.
The tee to green must be, I would guess, top 5 over the past 5 months.
Yeah, it's been really, really strong. And to your point, like, it's not just the ball striking. It is full tee to green. He's been outstanding around the greens. The Memorial, by the way, was actually like the first time he gained strokes putting since the Players, I think. So maybe it's all coming around for Keegan.
It makes his decision to make if he wins the U.S. Open, it'll make his decision to be on the Ryder Cup team a lot easier. I actually talked about Novak about that too. Like he really wants to make the Ryder Cup team.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I bet you could find some players who would say they'd rather make the Ryder Cup team than win a major this year. Cause it's a career defining honor just to make the team.
Well, you win the major, you get on the team. So it probably goes hand in hand.
Yeah, do both. That's the best answer for sure.
Sung Jae gained 8 strokes around the green last week.
It was unreal. It was completely unreal. And he did the same thing like over and over. He would put himself in perfect position off the tee and then hit a disastrous shot and then chip in for birdie or chip it to a foot. And a lot of the birdies that he made, like, it wasn't that he was hitting it close. He made a 20-footer when other guys were hitting it to 10 feet and missing the 10-footer. He's just there's only one Sung Jae right now, but he's doing the same thing every single week and still finishing 20th all the time or something like that.
In fairness, Hideki's kind of doing exactly the same thing too.
Yeah, he was a nightmare to watch all week as well because his ball striking was just atrocious this week.
So I think it's down to between Bobby Mack and Burns. And I could see using Bobby Mack at the Scottish again, because why not? He's been great there every time he's played it.
Yeah, that's a really good call. And I think like that's one of the best ways to think about one and done decisions. It's who am I going to regret not being able to play in a future event? And Bobby Mack is going to make a lot of sense at that tournament. And I also just think that he certainly has a more well-rounded game. And also, like, he's one of the more accurate players in the world off the tee. So it also just makes sense to save him for a week where accuracy matters more than distance off the tee, whereas Burns is the opposite. You want Burns when accuracy doesn't matter as much as distance.
You don't, but I mean, there could be a scenario, and I do want to see some of the reports from the course, because there was rumors they were going to grow at the rough pretty bad, like not as bad as last week, but even if it's a long course and all of a sudden you have 2.5-inch rough instead of it being fluffed up for you, and especially if it rains overnight too, these fairways are pretty wide, so you should be able to hit them. But if you're hitting long irons at a wet rough, that doesn't sound like a great scenario.
Correct, which is why I always say when rough is difficult, it can improve the predictive value of accuracy off the tee, but it's definitely going to improve the predictive value of distance off the tee, because it's not like you're choosing, am I taking the long guy in the rough or the short guy in the fairway? All of the players are going to hit a fair amount of fairways and all are going to miss a fair amount of fairways. When the long guy is hitting out of the rough, he's got a much better chance than the short guy who's 40 yards back and doesn't have the same speed that the longer hitter has. So whether the rough is down or not, I think Burns and that distance is going to really help him.
I would try to think so. The only reason that I would pivot to Bobby Mack here is because knowing that he's only been 7% used, so 93% of the field has him available right now. That I would guess that most will save him for Scotland. That doesn't really do me any good if everyone ahead of me in Scotland is also using Bobby Mack. Now I have to go use someone else. That if I can use him here and he finishes better here than he does in Scotland, then I gain on using Bobby Mack for the year, if that makes any sense.
It definitely does. I think what I would say is it really depends on whether you think you might want Bobby Mack in a signature event moving forward. If you don't, then I think it makes a ton of sense to use him here. If you do, obviously Bobby Mack performing well in a signature event would do a lot more than him playing well here. Which is honestly, kind of like the really annoying thing about one and done these days now, right? Like the signature events kind of really sabotage the one and done product. I still love it, but it'd be better if every single week mattered and not just 12 or whatever.
Well, it's weird. Like to win the signature event is so key. You're going to need 2 or 3 of those over the course of the years, along with the major. But I've actually piled up a bunch of points like JJ, because I keep using like borderline guys in these sorts of events. Like JJ Spawn at the Cognizant, he came second. He gained like $900,000 for me. Like that's very impactful. That's why I'm not in 400th place, and that's why I'm in 80th place right now, just picking up a few of those as the year went along. The only other one, like Burns does make the most sense. I'm trying to think, would I use Bobby Mack at an elevated event? Weirdly, the 2 spots, if I'm going to say I'm not going to use him in Scotland because he's going to be too popular and where I'm positioned right now, because I want to make a move towards the top, I can't be chalk with my picks. If I was in 10th place, I could be. I'm not, so I got to go a different route. Would probably be the U.S. Open or the Open Championship.
The Open Championship could be the best answer. It really could. Unless you have some live guys remaining that you would really want there, that would definitely make sense.
Rahm would probably be the guy. Because I don't know who I'm going to use next week, but with the way that, like, and maybe this, I'll talk about this more on the U.S. Open research show, obviously, but there was a rain delay last time the U.S. Open was there. So Dustin didn't even tee off until Friday, and it did dry out the course a little bit. But I noticed as the course, wet in the course a little bit as it dried out throughout the course of the weekend, you had like Dustin was tops in driving distance, but he also basically hit every single fairway as well. He crushed that week. No one was going to beat him when it came down to it. But then you start taking a look at some of the other names that were up there. It's like Lowry, Zach Johnson, Jim Furyk. Bobby Mack feels to me closer to that type of player, although he looks nothing like them, but his actual skill set, that if he is going to hit a bunch of fairways, which he does, his lack of distance, and it just seemed like Euro wind players and short accuracy players were the other type of guy that came through. So I can see Bobby Mack doing it. He plays tough courses really well.
He does. I agree with absolutely everything you said there. His iron play has been really good of late as well. I think it's a really good call. Burns and Bobby Mack make a lot of sense.
All right, let's go Burns. Burns is the official pick of this week's show. And now I want to go over to Underdog. So you've been crushing Underdog. I don't know if you want to give this away or make people, you know what, give it away. And they can go behind the paywall and get some more research over at FTN if they want to. But what has been working for you so well on Underdog with golf?
It's using the finishing position picks that they give and just recognizing the fact that a lot of the time Underdog is kind of setting these finishing position lines based on where sportsbooks have players priced. But sportsbooks are offering these finishing position like top 20 in one-way markets. But here on Underdog, you can take the opposite direction as well. And so a lot of the time you get a ton of value on the worse side of the 20 finishing position. And the one that has been the most profitable for me this year has been Ludwig Oberg, worse than 20.5. The best way I think I can put it is week in and week out, he is priced like the player we all know he can become, but he's not that guy yet. He just cost me a bunch of money, by the way, this past Sunday with the 6 under round, starting at 7 over. But even with that, he's only hit this 4 of 12 events this year. And remember that a lot of those events are like super small field. So his top 20 odds are actually lower this event for us at 32% than his hit rate on the season. It's just a really strong play. That means it has a 68% chance of hitting the worst 20.5. So I really, really like that one. And I think it can just be like a core pick for kind of everything that you do this week.
So what else? Like, do you play a lot of the single round stuff, or do you tend to target the tournament long ones?
I do play a lot of the single round stuff, but my strategy in the single round stuff usually is not to pick ahead of time, but to observe scoring in the morning and then fire on guys in the afternoon. And so, like, one of the things that I love doing is we never really know going into each round, like how the front nine versus the back nine will play. And a lot of the time you get courses where so many holes are like super dependent on the hole location for how difficult the hole is going to be. And also you get like tees moving. So, one day a par 4 might play at 380 and it can be somewhat difficult. And the next day they move it up to 310, make it drivable. And now it's one of the best birdie opportunities on the course. And so if Underdog isn't making that adjustment quick enough, you can find some great opportunities to, let's say you're going lower on back nine score for a player, higher on front nine score for another player. And now because you have one higher and one lower, you're also getting a boosted payout. So I love doing things like that. But I think like the general theme, you can probably hear this, is I'm not just trying to pick individually. I'm trying to like find almost like a systematic advantage over Underdog with these picks and do it that way where you're boosting payout and getting good correlation kind of all at the same time.
So looking at the weather, it did seem like Thursday might be the easiest scoring day, Friday second. Is this a time to target some birdies or better hires on some back end? Like I was just looking at EVR. So EVR or even Rasmus Højgaard, he's getting a multiplier on higher than 4.5 birdies. EVR is getting an even bigger multiplier on that. Would these be the sorts of guys to target for round one?
Yeah. And another thing you can do there is like you mentioned wind. If the afternoon is going to play a lot tougher than the morning, same idea. You can take higher on birdies in the morning, lower on birdies for an afternoon guy, and now you get a payout as if those are inversely correlated picks, but they're not inversely correlated if the wind picks up. So always keeping that sort of thing in mind. And then the other thing that I really like to do with these birdies or better picks is it's not just about how good is this player, it's how good is he at making birdies. And sometimes that can be a really different skill set. Like there are some players you're going to see they're 12th in bogey avoidance and 90th in birdie or better rate. And then some other guys are going to be 10th in birdie rate and 114th in bogey or worse. Like Justin Thomas last year was my favorite to do this with. Basically every single time Justin Thomas teed it up, he was either priced too low for birdies or too low for bogeys. One of the two was going to be wrong because a lot of time Underdog is pricing these guys, both birdies and bogeys, on their talent level and not specific to their ability to either make birdies or avoid bogeys.
Well, it does look like it is going to be less windy in the afternoon, and it's going to be a little bit warmer in the afternoon on Thursday. So maybe the Thursday higher birdies or better guys would be the guys to target with this Ludwig anchor.
Yeah, in the afternoon, that makes a lot of sense. So let's see. The guys you mentioned, Rasmus and EVR. EVR is an afternoon guy at 1.14x. I think that's pretty strong. Wyndham Clark is a guy that I like taking higher on birdies because he's one of those guys, like he's significantly better at making birdies than he is at avoiding bogeys. At least this year, that's been the case. So he's in the afternoon, as is Cam Young coming off the big qualifier. Yesterday he got through, so maybe you go Cam Young as well with the over birdies in the afternoon. I don't like to put them all together though, because then you really kind of hurt your payout, and like you're hoping for nice correlation, but you don't want the play to require that positive correlation to be a good one. So I don't love putting them all together.
What if we do two of them together? We do EVR and Wyndham Clark together, and they just throw on the Ludwig worst finishing position.
Yeah, so let's see what payout would that.
It gets us almost up to 7-1.
That's solid. That's really solid.
All right, let's do that. $100 pays $6.94 on this one. I'll throw this into the newsletter tomorrow night because, of course, I'll have to go play it from somewhere else because this computer, it might as well be in Antarctica based on the player location. Sometimes it works on Underdog. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it works on DraftKings. Sometimes it doesn't. But I do it from my phone. Shockingly enough, it works every time.
I've noticed the same sort of thing. And sometimes I just have to, I'm in Virginia, so sometimes I have to just refresh the page on Underdog. So it switches me from Pick'em to Champions, and then it'll let me place the play. So if anyone out there has experienced the same thing, sometimes all it takes a little refresh.
Okay, good to know. Coming up after the break, Alex and I are going to dig into the DraftKings slate and build some lineups. Stay tuned. If you're looking to up your game this summer, Tour Striker Online Golf Academy gives you the real coaching you've been missing. Monthly personal swing analysis. You send in your swing, boom, you'll get your feedback from a coach every single month. Premium weekly video tips, an expanded and enhanced library of tips reserved only for Academy members. I've been digging into these ones since I got my Tour Striker Online Golf Academy account, and my short game really starting to improve. That's where I needed to go immediately, and boom, there were tons of tips for me to help myself get up and down for par instead of just making bogey everywhere. Many golfers make getting better way harder than it needs to be. They try to Frankenstein a swing by watching some YouTube videos and an Instagram reel, and all of those tips don't work in conjunction with each other, which you're going to get at the Tour Striker Online Golf Academy. And the worst part is, if you do it by Frankensteining it together, you pick up bad habits that are really hard to unlearn. I know, I went through this for years. It's frustrating, it's slow, and it leaves you stuck way longer than you need to be. So what you need to do is head to tourstriker.com/TSGA and use the code MAYO to get your first month of Tour Striker Golf Academy online free, plus instant access to 2 bonus courses, the recipe for better golf and bombs, and how to consistently smash the driver, a $194 value. That's tourstriker.com/TSGA, then use the code MAYO. The Travelers Championship, the Northeast one and only PGA Tour signature event. Can it surpass the excitement of last year's thrilling finale when Scottie Scheffler broke away from the loaded leaderboard with 3 straight birdies in the back 9 during the final round, leading to a dramatic one-hole playoff with Tom Kim winning him his 6th PGA Tour victory of the year? Will Scottie repeat as champion? Come watch as the world's best PGA Tour players try to dethrone him. All of them competing all 4 days at TPC River Highlands. The action begins June 19th and runs through June 22nd. For tickets and information, visit TravelersChampionship.com to see the greats, including Scottie Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, Xander Schauffele, Ludwig Oberg, and the rest. The Travelers Championship. There is only one. Coming back, Pat Mayo Experience, Canadian Open DraftKings Picks coming up right now. Alex Blickle from FTN. Continuing on, Rory, I'm guessing, Alex, is going to be the highest owned player this week.
I would assume so, for sure.
So let's throw him, let's try to build the chalkiest lineup we can think of. So it's Rory, then who is it? Like, where do we go after this? What are you seeing down the board?
It's a little bit hard to say this early in the week, but I think that both Riley and Knapp are going to be pretty popular in the 7Ks.
Yeah, I'm seeing Ricky Castillo pop, but that's on Fantasy National, so that just might be my doing.
That's possible. No, I agree. I think he's going to be fairly popular as well. Certainly, I think like the number one thing that people are going to be looking for is distance, which is why Rory's going to be such an automatic click. Riley's also long. Of course, Knapp is long, and Knapp has a somewhat long history now of performing really well on courses where it's just bombs away. So I definitely think all those guys fit that bill. Castillo is long, not crazy long, but
he's long enough.
Yeah, and I sort of think like down the board, the story might just be that ownership is spread out enough that we don't have to care a ton about ownership of like our 6K plays or low 7K plays.
Well, I'm trying to think of who else would fit into this. So I'm seeing, I mean, yes, his name is phonetically pronounced Castillo, but until he actually like wins me money, he's remaining Ricky Castillo. Like that's.
And honestly, like it might be Castillo, and he maybe just thought that Americans weren't smart enough to do the silent L, so he just told us to pronounce it Castillo. I don't know the answer, but Castillo might be right.
So let's go to Fox. I think Fox finds his way into this lineup. He looks like he's gaining a bit of steam as well. I threw in Nicholas Norgard Muller kind of based off what you said, and that would give us, so what was Riley? How much was he? 79. He fits perfect. So that's a horrible team, but it looks good on paper.
Yeah. I mean, I think like this is probably true in every DFS sport, but it's definitely true in PGA. You can't just start with all the chalky guys because you're left with so few opportunities to separate from the field. It's not the way to go.
So how do you think I'm going to enter this one anyway, just for kicks, see if it will allow me to. They're going to check my location to make sure that I'm in the spot where I need to be. But let's throw back in Rory. Now let's try to do this a different way. I want to get another, not necessarily stud with him, but I want to try to get two more good players that I consider to be good with him. That means we have to go dumpster diving in the 6Ks. I've already said I like Rosner. He's $6,900. Toasty is not in the sixes, but I believe he's 71. So those are two guys that I like. Who can you see from down that list that could make an impact? Because I think the Champ's not even in the player pool yet. I guess they're not going to put him in.
I'm not sure.
Because if they do, I think he's a pretty good play.
Yeah. What has he done lately?
Now, he barely plays is the thing.
Yeah.
But ball speed, he's still number one. Distance, he's still number one. He can drive, chip, and putt.
Yeah, I do think Craig Ranch is probably a decent course comp. Not only is it so much about distance and less about accurate, but you also get the surprise boost in around the green signal there, despite the fact that it's such a birdie fest. So I think Craig Ranch could be a good comp. And guess what? Champ finished 15th there this year. So maybe Cam Champ is worth a look, even though he's certainly not going to project well in any models. But I think there's kind of a group in the low sevens. Gim, EVR, who I know you're interested in, Rico Hoey. I think Matt McCarty is a much better player than his price suggests at 7,200. And then I mentioned Norgard. I think Jesper Svensson is another guy like that. He's not going to be a projection darling because we just don't have enough data yet on him for him to really pop. But he's got a lot of the skill sets we're looking for, particularly off the tee this week.
How about, I know it didn't go well for him qualifying for the U.S. Open, but Gordon Sargent has a ton of distance.
Yeah, he's just been atrocious. I guess maybe it was just college, but he was finishing outside the top 50 in college events over and over and over again. It has not been good for him in quite a long time. So
looking at Jesper Svensson, he hasn't gained strokes on approach since Mexico. That could be an issue.
It definitely could. Yeah.
Although he chips well.
He chips well and he drives the ball really well. And his putting is like the biggest question mark in the world to me, because on the Euro Tour, he was a very good putter. He came to the U.S., started playing the PGA Tour this year, and he was great to start the season. I think he gained a ton at the Sony Open and the American Express, and then lost it with a putter, and then found it was hot with a putter for 5-event stretch, and now he's been awful with the putter again for a 4-event stretch. So he has probably been the hottest / coldest putter in the world on tour this year, and you just don't know what you're going to get. But if you get the hot putter from him, the way he drives the ball, he can make some noise here.
So you could do a Svensson versus Svensson bet. They're both $7,200. You could have the Canadian, who's sponsored by my good friends at CoolBet, or Jesper Svensson, who is third in the field in driving distance.
And they are also polar opposites in the way they game their strokes. Svensson is accurate and a great iron player and a bad putter. Yeah, Adam Svensson, that is. And Jesper is long off the tee, potentially a good putter. They do both have a pretty solid stroke game, though.
Svensson switched to the broomstick putter.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Svensson, that is.
Yeah.
So here are two guys that I wanted to look at from down below to make this work, because we have an average salary of $8,400 with this team that we have in right now, which means we could get Wyndham Clark and Max Homa if we wanted to. You can't be on the Max Homa is back bandwagon, right? Because I am off that bandwagon. That's not happening.
No, I'm off that bandwagon. He was another one of my worst selections this past week, and I also hit him again after round 2. They posted it might have been after round 1, because he played the really good round 1, and they posted him at even money at worse than 10.5 finishing position. He was 60th by the end of round 3, and it was an easy win.
You could go Kitayama Goddard with this team. That fits.
I like that a lot.
So this we just also bombs away the team, except for Rosner, who's good distance, but will help you out with his long irons immensely. This team is going to miss every putt, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So you could play that variation of this lineup, or you could punch that one back in and take out Kitayama and Goddard. There was two guys that I was looking at from down low. One of them actually qualified for the U.S. Open where you were. Trevor Cohn, if he's actually playing good golf, why not here?
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see what
he is large off the tee.
Yes, very. He's just a sea of missed cuts, but the skill set is there. The skill set is there, and obviously, like, you're not going to find a guy at 6,300 in a field like this who's been making all of his cuts. If he was making cuts, he'd be 7,300 minimum. So, yeah, I don't mind taking chances on that kind of guy. It's also worth noting that, like, that kind of player at least profiles as somebody who, when he makes a cut, he's going to do so because he's making a lot of birdies and giving you some DraftKings points that way. But I also really like what you did with the Kitayama Goddard pairing, Pat, because that's a really good skill set stack, right? They're both great off the tee. They both have the kind of length that, if length ends up being like significantly more predictive than it usually is, which it absolutely could be this week, that's benefiting them both. So you're getting a type of correlation in a sport that really rarely offers it. So I like that a lot.
Well, the other one that you could go to, if you didn't go to Kitayama from that range, you could go to Wyndham Clark in Kitayama instead of Goddard, just knowing how good Clark is around the greens, if that ends up becoming a prevalent theme, especially on the weekend.
Yeah, that's another good call. And he also kind of fits the idea, I was talking about like the confidence that you get earlier when you're in a field where you're one of the better players. Maybe he gets that kind of boost here. It's also, by the way, like Tambo loves to talk about looking at strength of field stats. And of course, strength of field is important, like just making sure that you're adjusting for course strength or for field strength. But it's also, I think, important because there is a mentality change when you're one of the better players in a field compared to when you're one of the worst.
So I threw in Stephen Fisk and Robert McIntyre. Instead of doing Kitayama, Goddard, I played that lineup, but that 2v2 is exactly the same as Fisk and McIntyre. Now, it can be anyone who's $7,000, but Fisk he fits the team of mashes it off the tee, great iron player, can't putt.
Yeah, we've talked about Fisk before as like the new Luke List, and I'm so in on that comparison. And I used to play Luke List every single chance that I got, so I better be prepared to play Stephen Fisk now.
But there's guys around there, and I don't know if they necessarily fit the mold of what we're looking for, because it could be anyone at 7,000 or anyone at 6,900 to make this particular team work. Kevin Roy kind of does a lot of the similar things that Fisk does, almost to a T, except somehow Kevin Roy is a worse putter than Stephen Fisk. Other than that, you're looking at like Rosner and Danny Walker from down below. Obviously, I like Rosner, and that's why he's already in this lineup. But I don't love Danny Walker. I felt like he had 3 really good weeks, and that was it for him.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about who you're going to pair with Bobby Mack, Lee Hodges is a very similar player to Bobby Mack. He's accurate off the tee. He's a great iron player. Very different, by the way, than like his skill set a couple of years ago. We see that a lot with guys. Like they very clearly put some time in. He used to be all about driving and around the green play, making up for a bad iron play. And as he has dramatically improved his iron play, guess what? The around the green hasn't been as strong lately. So you could definitely get some skill set stacking that way. But he also has the advantage of just simply being better in our baseline projections too. So Hodges might be the guy that I go with down here.
So Hodges over Fisk. His around the green is bad.
It has, yeah. I mean, it used to be really, really solid, and it has been. Well, you know what? I'll say it's been bad, but like it's not costing him a ton. He's just never gaining. But he's not doing the thing that like Novak did last week, where he completely plays himself out of the tournament because he is a disaster around the green.
So this would be a shorter hitter, great iron player, at least in the context of this field. He has lost over 4 strokes putting in 3 of his past 4 starts, 2 of which were miscuts. So maybe he's lost it with his putter, because he had gained in basically every tournament on the season, and then he got to Valero, and it's been lights out, like lights off for his good putting. It's been horrible.
So one of the things that we do at FTN in our projections is we actually treat every like individual statistic differently for how much we're looking at recent form compared to long-term form, because every skill has different signal. And putting is one of the really interesting ones, because you actually have to go back 44 rounds worth of data before you start getting some actual signal. with putting skill compared to what's just total randomness. And honestly, like I think Hodges is a perfect example of this because you mentioned that he was really good to start this year putting. He racked up like 6 straight weeks gaining. In some of those weeks, he was gaining a ton. But look how he did in the 10 weeks prior. He had lost strokes putting in 10 weeks prior. And then he gained 6 in a row. And then he got really bad again with the putter. So you just never know when it's going to be good, when it's going to be bad, especially with the guys like Hodges who have shown us he can find it and lose it at any time whatsoever. And he doesn't need to show any kind of trend in that direction for it to happen.
No, but when he flips the trend, it tends to stay for a while.
Sure,
is the one thing like gain
3
straight, lose 3 straight, gain 4 straight, lose 3 straight, or lose 9 straight, gain 5 straight, lose in 5 of 6.
Mm-hmm. But he's already lost in 4 in a row, so maybe maybe
it's time for the turnaround. All right,
he's going to turn it back around for 4 weeks.
I'll believe you on that front. So we'll throw him in. So this team would end up looking like Rory and Bobby. Then you got Hodges, EVR, Toasty, and Rosner down at the bottom. Who is it that you think you would take below Rosner if you really wanted to build some aggressive lineups? I'm not playing no cash game here. I'm playing to win GPPs.
Yeah.
There's not a ton. Is the problem? Like Cone was the best I could do, I think.
I think. Oh man, what price is Rosner?
Rosner's 69.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. One thing I'll say here is
Damon is there. He's at 68, but who knows with him?
Yeah, I think when I go dumpster diving like this, the first thing I'll say is you're not going to find a guy who's going to project well. You're not going to find a guy who makes a bunch of cuts. You should play kind of the way that, I approached US Open qualifying. Assume they have their A game. Who do you want? And for me, I think the answer is Will Gordon because I know Will Gordon makes a ton of birdies. He projects okay. He's longish off the tee. So I think he's probably the guy that I'd go to down here. When he plays well, it's ball striking. And the course redesigner talks about he really wanted to put an emphasis on ball striking here because he was tired of hearing about PGA Tour players calling every course a putting contest. So it's a good fit for Gordon. And most importantly, when he plays well, he's going to score really well on DraftKings.
And finally, if we start to think about the comps of if distance truly does matter at this course more than anything else, what do we have here? Since the beginning of the season, actually in his past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, he's missed 6 of his past 7 cuts on tour, but he has a 5th place finish at the CJ Cup at the Bunny Ranch, which we called potentially a comp course, at least for the first 2 days to here. And then he was top 10 at the Farmers at Torrey Pines, another big driver course.
And it's also good to just see like when he plays well, he can actually get himself into contention, right? It's not, if he makes the cut, he's just going to finish 40th or 50th. Like he can actually give you one of the best DraftKings scores of the entire week.
So do you want to throw Rory into this lineup, or do you think this is one that we can try to finagle a little bit? Like I would guess if it's not Rory in people's lineups, and I haven't projected right now, probably like right around 30 to 35%. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, and I think he's got a chance to be even higher in single entries.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then after that, of the like priciest guys, Connors, Lowry, Pendrith, and Burns are probably the ones. So the more that I look at this for one and done, just even looking at the DraftKings ownership, just the want for people to play Burns over McIntyre and Pendrith over McIntyre might end up telling the story here. And a lot of people might use Connors and Lowry as well. But chalk-wise, this lineup would go like Connors, Pendrith, Burns. But I'm more comfortable starting with Robert McIntyre.
I like the Robbie Mac play a lot. I think he's going to be under-owned. I think McIntyre, Pendrith, Sungjae, Harry Hall are kind of the names that are standing out to me the most at the top so far. But I will say, Pat, if you're playing a Will Gordon, a really, really low probability play that if he hits, he's doing it at minuscule ownership and
he's do it with Rory
in like a really important way. That's the kind of lineup that you probably want Rory in, because that 40% for Rory, like it almost becomes, hey, if Will Gordon hits, how can I maximize the probability of the rest of the lineup doing well? And Rory does a very nice job of that.
What do you make of Clanton in this field and where he's at? Like $100 less than Keith Mitchell, 100 more than Mac Hughes, 200 more than Mac Taylor. The Thorbjorn Olesen odds and pricing this week are the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I just don't understand it, but there he is at $8,700.
I'm not sure. I mean, he's played well, but I think Clanton's a pretty solid play here. He has won 4 times in college since the end of February. He's playing very good golf, and I like the fact that we have seen him contend a lot already on the PGA Tour, because I think one of the concerns when you have someone this talented who gets out on tour, it's like I expect him to play well early on, but he's never felt contention. He's never felt those nerves on the tour. How's he going to handle that? We know that Clanton already has that experience. We already know that he can play well in those conditions, in that pressure. So I think Clanton's a definitely solid play, unless he ends up really popular, which I do think is possible, in which case give me Nick Taylor, Mac Hughes, Harry Hall, who are just better players at this point in their lives, and they're going to be lower owned.
Of the names that you just mentioned, I think only Mac Hughes comes in below him. I think that we're going to see some tentativeness with Luke Clanton because of the price and what that costs you. Like, do people play Rory and Clanton together? Probably not. Like, if you're going to find the money to play Clanton with Rory, you're going to find the money to find $300 more to play Burns with Rory.
That's possible. I do think that distance is going to be like enough of a narrative around the industry that guys who don't have it at all, like a Nick Taylor, are going to be very much overlooked, even though Nick Taylor has the Canadian Open narrative behind him as well.
So of the guy of that type of player that you just mentioned, if bombers are going to be the narrative, which I agree with, can we find some low owned bombers to put in these lineups? The answer is Wyndham Clark. No one's using him.
Yeah, Wyndham Clark. I think Gotterup and Rasmus Højgaard will both be low-ish, at least owned. Maybe not Gotterup, but I'd be shocked if Rasmus Højgaard has a bunch of ownership around him. Kevin Yu.
Yeah, my guy.
Yeah. And we mentioned already, but Ryan Fox, I think, is a really good play, and I don't think he'll get a ton of ownership. Basically, anyone under $8,000, I think, is topping out at 15% for maybe Riley and Knapp, but I don't think anyone's going to really steam above that.
So we can play a version of this lineup that's Rory Clanton. So it's Rory Clanton, Smalley, Toasty, Kevin Yu, and Will Gordon. So I'm going to throw that in, and then we can readjust it to play Wyndham Clark in this lineup and see what that gives us in terms of a little bit more flexibility. Because I think Kevin Yu made all of his putts for the first time in his career at the PGA Championship and had the worst tee to green week of the past 2 years.
Yeah, and I will say, in major championships, I will give players a pass for uncharacteristic things. And so, Kevin Yu, his ball striking has been really, really good kind of all season, both off the tee and with the irons. I think we probably see that come back, even though it was bad once again at the Charles Schwab. I think he's more likely to solve that quickly than to see a prolonged slump, if you will.
How do you feel about Rasmus, just in general?
He was one of the guys kind of earlier this year that I had the most trouble projecting, because he was very clearly a far better player than what he was showing with ShotLink data. And that was largely because at the Genesis, the Players, and the Valspar, he wasn't just bad. He didn't just miss cuts. He was the worst player in the field. And every other event he's gaining with all aspects of his ball striking, but those events were so bad that it just pulled down his projection so much. I like the fact that, number one, he's got the type of skills that are really explosive for scoring, so long off the tee. But then he's also had a number of really strong rounds in various conditions, like a difficult round at Augusta, a lot of the field's struggling, and he's making a ton of pars and saving pars. And then he's at other rounds where a lot of the field is struggling to make birdies, and he's making 6 or 7 birdies. So a wide variety of types of success that he's had, even though if you look at just the pure results, they haven't quite been there. But I think he's a really, really talented guy. And I think all you have to do is look to anyone talking about what the European Ryder Cup team is going to look like, and everyone is pretty much calling him a shoo-in, to kind of to give you an indication of just how talented this guy is and how good he can be.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with calling him a shoo-in is that he's almost assuredly going to win the Europe points based on the end of his last year when he won the DP World Tour Championship. That I don't think they can legally keep him off the team.
Fair, but why did he do that? Because he was outstanding for an entire season on the DP World Tour.
True. And like the reason he's in all the signature events is because he won
Mhm.
the DP World Tour and got his card to the PGA Tour. It's a part of that 10 players that end up coming over. Can you tell me anything about John Kiefer? Because he's been a lightning rod this week.
I can tell you just by pure coincidence, one of the guys I was playing with yesterday in the qualifier mentioned that he had full Corn Ferry status, and in one of the tournaments he was playing, I don't even know which one, Kiefer was one of the guys who like played through a flu/food poisoning that was going around when they were in a different country. That's like the first I had really heard of him, but I did do all the projections this morning and noticed that this is a really solid player in Kiefer. So he's been really, really good on the Corn Ferry Tour. Very similar, by the way, to Højgaard on the DP World Tour last year, where it's not just that like he's getting these starts and he's making noise in the Corn Ferry because he won a couple times. It's that he's consistently finishing top 5, top 10. He does have a win, but that to me says more than, he won twice and so he's in on points, but outside of those wins, he's kind of been an up and down player. No, Kiefer's been just very solidly good, fairly long off the tee, but it looks more like he's just an all-around good player.
T3 here last year in the PGA of America's finals. So that's how he ended up getting his card to the Corn Ferry Tour. And he's been taking full advantage of that. So he is one of the few players in this field, along with Pendrith and along with Knapp, that actually do have experience.
Yeah, that's I think it can certainly be an advantage, especially if they do stay true to their word that they're going to make this a flexible setup and change things around, because it means that he will have likely seen all of the different looks that they can throw at them this week.
So this lineup looks like Rory, Clark, Højgaard, Fox, Castillo, and Will Gordon in it. That leaves you with $0. You've maxed out your salary cap. How do you feel about a team like that? Is that too bad at the bottom end?
No, because I think it's doing a pretty good job of using Rory. Objectively speaking, I think that in my single entry, I probably won't use Rory because he's just too owned. But what I would say is when you use Rory, you want to make sure that the rest of their players can actually help you separate from all the other Rory lineups. And these guys are the types of players who, yes, they can. When they play well, they're going to separate. They're not just going to be okay for you. So I like that style of Rory lineup a lot. And the flip side of that is like a lot of the guys that we just put in that lineup, I probably would try and steer away from when I'm not using Rory and I am going a more balanced and contrarian route at the top.
Well, let's build a balanced lineup, a non-Rory lineup. Let's try to figure out what those lineups end up looking like. I said before that it doesn't feel like people are going to use Ludwig at all.
I would agree with that.
Do you want to use him? Or is it like it was on Underdog that he's being priced as a guy that he's not right now?
It really depends on his ownership. I think what I'd say is if you get him to 10% or lower, I will be interested. If he's 15% instead of the 25% that you're going to see on like Connors and Lowry, then I'm not interested. But if he's low enough that like you can win a tournament on DraftKings because Oberg goes out and wins or finishes third, which is very much within his range of outcomes. Like I'm saying he's not as good as people want him to be yet, but he can become that guy very quickly. And we saw just how quick it can turn for him in this final round last week. So I think there's absolutely an opportunity for Oberg, but it also just depends on like, what are you trying to do with your lineup? Are you trying to win with your contrarian guy at the top, or are you trying to set up the rest of your lineup in a better position where your worst guy in is going to be a much better golfer than the worst guy in all of Rory lineups? And in that regard, you probably just want to go even further down the board than Oberg to a Bobby Mack, a Pendrith, Sungjae, Harry Hall, that type.
So I've built out Pendrith with Burns, Kitayama and Goddard, Toasty and EVR. Mm-hmm. Like building little sets of guys in pockets next to each other, but all mash it off the tee.
This is a beautiful like skill set stack. I like this a lot.
I worry about the putting, except for Burns. Burns can putt.
Burns might be the best putter in the world. It's basically either him, Cam Smith, or Denny McCarthy. Guarantee you one of the best putters in the world is from that group of three.
All right, so we'll submit that one, and we'll call the DraftKings stuff a day. Tell everyone where they can check out your work and the modeling you were talking about.
Yeah, at ftnfantasy.com. You can also find me at Alex Blickle 1 on Twitter. Access to my Discord, you can find that through there as well. But most of what I do, and particularly like the models, the ownership projections, we've been able to show we're the best in the industry on ownership projections at FTN in all sports, but especially PGA and NFL, which of course is kind of around the corner now. So can't wait for the NFL season either.
I mean, a lot of people have struggled with PGA projections so far this year. Have you found it's been a more difficult year for ownership projections?
Yes, but there are patterns that we're seeing. So like basically like this happens every year, I think, where ownership looks very different than the year before. What is driving ownership is different. The types of players that people are choosing is different. But it always settles in, and I think we found it. And actually, like I have noticed a bigger change in showdown ownership than in main slate ownership. And one of the things is like almost every single showdown, people are stacking one of the waves. And so a lot of my process for showdown ownership, I might even be giving away too much here, is simply looking at what was ownership the day before. How can I adjust for the price discrepancy between one day to the next, and then adjusting that. But that kind of assumes that the ownership the day before accurately portrays the industry sentiment on that player. And it doesn't now because it's so dependent on the wave split. And so that has been a bigger adjustment for me than main slate. But we've been doing really well with main slate ownership. And I would say, like, I think our advantage is even bigger in single entry ownership projections than MME ownership projections, because that's when you get into like the psychology of actually clicking the player's name. And I think that's where the effort and the time that we put into those kinds of projections really shows up with the accuracy.
Look back at past 36 rounds of 17 mile per hour winds and beyond. Woodland, Rory, Lowry, Mitchell, Connors, Griot are the top 6 players in the model that I've built out in wins of that strength. You also get like Chuck Hoffman and Trey Mullenix, Adam Hadwin, Sung Jae, Nick Hardy ends up popping up, as does Bobby Mack, Thomas Dietrich, Wyndham Clark, Alex Noren, and Nick Taylor. Aaron Wise is in this field, by the way.
Yes, he is.
Probably should have mentioned that.
He is. Look, I'm not going to play him on DraftKings. I'm not going to bet him, but I am rooting extremely hard for him. It would be a hell of a story if he could come back and find his game.
What happened to him?
He just broke mentally.
Did he? That's what it was. It was just like mental problems. It wasn't like a wrist injury or something.
No, it was all mental. And honestly, like, you could see it for about a year. He just beat himself up so much, especially for like short misses. But like if he hit it to 20 feet with a wedge, it was like he just made the biggest mistake of his life, and he just wasn't giving himself any grace. And hopefully he's in a much better place now. But yeah, I think he just got to a point where like he realized it wasn't healthy anymore to keep playing golf because of the battle it was putting him in mentally. And that's why I'll be rooting for him, because it'd be a hell of a story if he could come back and overcome all that.
All right, well, I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at the PME. U.S. Open week starts tomorrow with the research show. Andrew Novak on Friday, and then the sim walkthrough on Saturday. I have a special show for a palate cleanser on Sunday before we get into the meat and potatoes, the bets, the DraftKings picks with Tambo back live next Wednesday, and then a whole lot more fun coming on through. So please stay tuned to the channel, review the audio podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, smash the like while you're here, and I will have my newsletter out with all of the final plays Wednesday evening, so you can sub to that for free down in the description right now. I'll see you next time.
Mayo experience! Experience!